Well, hello everybody. Good morning. I'm back. Mostly better. See if I can get through the stream without coughing. Sorry about last week. I was a bit unwell to do Houdini. But I'm back and I'm going to keep working on the explosion. Hopefully you can hear me. Just double check my audio settings. Should be all good. Let me know if you can hear me, if audio's okay. So, hey Michael, how's it going? Hey Robert. Yeah, there's this new tool called Houdini and you can do explosions in it. It's amazing. And they're not real time. So I just cached this to disk to see where I got to last, 2 weeks ago, last time I was doing this file. I haven't done anything since then. And as you can see, it's certainly a mushroom cloud. You know, it's that classic kind of nuclear explosion. But, you know, it needs work. There's some stuff happening here, you know, that kind of collapsing effect that was going on. I think probably I had negative temperature on the static object. Let's say -1. Yep. So that's what's creating that. That's right. Almost like a movie. Hey Alan, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. And the last thing that I did last week, or the week before, last session, was to create this wind, so you can see that towards the top we're getting this kind of drift happening. And that's based on the bounding box. As you can see, it's also clipping the bounds, which, depending on the camera, might not matter. In this case, it doesn't matter, but I think our camera is probably a little close now. And this is kind of interesting, this effect that's happening here. I don't know if it's really that realistic, but it's, you know, it's kind of cool. Let's zoom our camera out a little bit. So we'll go in, lock the viewport, and pull in, or pull out like that. There we go. So, you know, the wind could potentially kick in a little sooner. At the moment, it's really sort of weighted to the top. And it takes a little while to kind of get up to speed. So that could be something that, you know, could change. The bounding box, you know, could be larger as well because it's clipping here, you can see. Now, again, depending on the camera, you know, it might not matter, but maybe I can sort of reduce it a little bit like that. There we go. So I was looking at reference today, this morning, and just, you know, seeing what I still want to add to this thing. There's some really cool. I found this Operation Desert Rock, which seems pretty bad. They were kind of like testing on troops, but there's some really cool photos. Like, that's amazing. Incredible detail. Really nice lighting on that. What we're currently missing is detail, but also this kind of base section to the explosion. So this kind of like Shockwave, but it's a much, you know, thicker, denser Shockwave. Also, these kind of straight lines that we talked about last time, kind of interesting. So I might like to, you know, try and get some of those. It almost kind of has the effect of being a, you know, those kind of smoke streamers that they use on wind tunnels to test the aerodynamics of a car. So it almost looks a little bit like those because, you know, they go up in a kind of straight fashion, and then as they advect with the explosion, they kind of distort, which is kind of interesting. So that could be a cool thing to play around with. Rizwan, was morning a few hours ago in Australia? Well, it is still morning here. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. So it will be morning for a couple more hours. So, and you can see, like, I guess this is all the same explosion, but you can see these kind of straight lines in various forms. And yeah, they're kind of a weird sort of phenomenon. I can't remember what they have a specific name, I think, these things, but so yeah, that could be an interesting thing to kind of look at. There you go, you can see them there still deforming. And yeah, this kind of cloudy base is what I want to try and get today. It's the main thing I want to try and do. So get that cloudy base. There's so many like hilarious photos of these guys. They probably didn't fare too well after being exposed to the radiation, I'm guessing. But yeah, there's some weird photos of people enjoying themselves around a nuclear explosion. 7 p.m. over here. Well, good evening to you. Alright, so I mean, one of the things I'm not super in love with at the moment is the very sort of spherical nature of it, although it is kind of realistic. One thing that I thought when looking at this cached out, you know, you can see my source is just a big ball that goes under the ground plane, but we're not actually emitting there, so you can see it gets chopped off like this. As we scrub, no, templated my sim, there we go. As I scrub, you can see that just gets eroded. Anyway, so what I might do, excuse me, is move it up a little bit above the ground plane. So let's do that. Just going to move it up slightly. And then I might just clamp. Let's do an attribute wrangle. And I will clamp it. So I'm going to say at p.y. Actually, I'll do it in if. Yeah, I'll do it in if statement. If at p.y is less than 0, at p.y equals 0. So look at that. There we go. So it just basically flattens all of the points that were below 0 to the 0 level. And you could change that value if you wanted to. You know, you could make it 0.1, you could make it negative 0.1, so it's a little bit below, or whatever you like. You could also change this value so it does it, you know, to stuff that's below 0.1 instead. So whatever you want to do there. And then that should still fill with points, which is good. And then, yeah, that should all work. So now I've got a flat bottom to our cloud, and it should, you know, in theory, kind of just work a little bit differently and look a little bit more connected to the ground, hopefully, as well, because it's emitting, it's getting all of that emission. It doesn't have to do any of that chopping off that was happening. So it might change it. I don't know. I find usually it does. You don't necessarily want to emit below the ground like that. So that's the first thing to do. Doesn't look like it changed it too much. Now the next thing is maybe tweaking this expansion as well. So we've got this rapid expansion happening. 1, 2, 3 frames. Maybe making it a little bit larger. Let's try that. And then sucking in over time. Also got this amplitude that we could, you know, potentially tweak a little bit. What's this? This multiplier. And what do we got here? Offset. So we could change the offset as well. $F divided by 24, just so we get a different sampling of noise every frame. That might be interesting. Alright, let's have a look. It's going to get a bit bigger. And we got to do a lot of work with shaping, you know, to add those nice kind of what I would call pyroclastic details, this really cloudy details that you get in explosions, like all this kind of stuff, you know, all the detail that makes it look like Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but let me see. It's probably you might have seen it, but it's pretty funny. KFC looks exactly like fire. Look at that. Amazing. Makes me hungry. What am I drinking? I am drinking lemon and honey tea to stop me from coughing. I like this one. Power Rangers. Anyway, I digress. Alright, let's see what this looks like. So it's definitely a lot larger. Let's have a look through the camera. Do we have our Tommy? I think I created a Tommy last time, didn't I? Reference scale. That's right. Delicious KFC Explosion. Come on, you know you want it. Alright. Let's have a look with Tommy. So Tommy's over here. He's really, really small. Let me just move him over so we can see him. So this is a big explosion. Poor Tommy. Boom. Alright. Black hot tea, British blend. I'm not really a black tea fan. I sometimes have it, but I prefer coffee. Occasionally I'll have a black tea if I don't feel like that extreme caffeine hit. Alright. Oh, well, we're still looking at the cached one here, so that's why it's showing me that bit below. Let's have a look at this one. Oh, there we go. It's a lot bigger. Alright. So you can see the expansion, what happens is the source expands obviously to fill the area, and then it just sort of stops, and it then evolves. So I might want to add a little bit of outward velocity to that. Hey David, how's it going? I'm back. Thanks for joining me. Blowing stuff up. It's alright. Let's have a look at what I don't remember what I was doing with velocity, or whether I have a velocity. It doesn't look like I actually have velocity here. So let's create a marker just so we can see it. If we have it, and we don't, label that. Sorry. So for velocity, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to I'll put a trail node down. Let's see what this looks like, because I've got moving noise. I put that offset in the amplitude. If I put a trail down and calculate velocity, that moving noise potentially could create some crazy vels. There we go, we've got huge vels on the expansion. So basically it's just calculating, the difference in position between that frame and that frame. That's quite a big difference. So it's going to register a large velocity. So I don't know, let's rasterize it and see what we get. We'll add it in. Rasterize it there. And we'll add it to our source if we don't have it already. Nope. Let's add it in. Vector V and vel is our target field. Well, we'll try add first of all. It's probably going to be way too strong, but let's see what happens. Nothing. Great. Okay. Let's see. Go back. Rasterize V. Oh, doesn't look like it's creating velocity. What did I do? Compute velocity. Ah, the old points from volume. So points from volume. Hey, Hardik, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. Nice to see you again. Points from volume doesn't copy source attributes. So attribute transfer. If you ever create attributes before, which the trail is, you need to make sure that you transfer it back on. So just something like that. There you go. You can see our V coming through now. And now we should see the side effect. I'll expect it to expand. Well, there we go. We're seeing a change to the effect. You see how it created a lot more of those mushroomy shapes, and that's what adding velocity to a simulation will do, because it's creating a push. Those pushes result in curl, which starts to make that mushroom shape. So there you go. It's interesting, how adding velocity to it will just add those mushroomy kind of shapes. Now, arguably, that doesn't look really that great, so we need to kind of work out, how we can sort of adjust that or work with it. There are lots of different ways. I'm alright, Hardik, thank you. I'm still a little bit sick, but not too bad. Feeling much better this week. There are a few different options here in terms of scale. So, sorry, operation. I guess, yeah, you could call it scale. This is the way that the field is going to be added to the pyro field. So, add is just adding that value every frame. you've got subtract. You could subtract it. I've never done subtract. That would be interesting. What would subtract do? Let's see. Probably not going to be what we want. It's going to like compress it. Weird. I don't know what's going on there, but obviously it's not what we want. All these options. Basically, pull is a good one to use, where you have this acceleration and deceleration strength, so it will actually pull the velocity field along with this field until it reaches that maximum velocity that's coming from this field. So it's it's a bit of a slower, a bit of an ease in, and it tends to create less of those mushroom clouds. And you can set the acceleration and deceleration quite high so that it gets up to speed very quickly. You'll probably get more mushroom clouds if you do that. Or you can set it low, so it's a bit more of a slower ease into that velocity. So it's not just going to add the full amount every frame, it's going to, over time, basically it's like it divides it down by the time step so that you're, you kind of get that value added much less. It's accumulation. You can still see we're getting mushroom clouds. Hey Ivan, how's it going? Nice to see you. Must be late for you. You can see we're still getting those mushroom clouds, but you know the effect is kind of a bit less. It's interesting we're getting like this very left to right motion from our velocity field. It's kind of weird. Let's have a look at our velocities. See if they're biased at all to a particular direction. Oh, they're a little kind of flat looking. You have to be careful with velocities. You can see that that's a large amount of vectors displayed in the viewport, and it can start to choke a little bit. You can see it's very slow now. So let's have a look at my velocities. Am I doing anything in these? I can't really remember what I was doing here. Nope. Trail. So I could turn the offset off. I could also potentially do the scale before the point vault, although that would change things a little bit. The other option that I could do here is to not calculate velocity like this, but I could take the normals. So we've got normals here, which are sort of pointing outwards. You can see how they're all pointing out. So I could take those and convert them. So instead of transferring V, I could transfer N here. You can see how we have this, now these normals on the points pointing outwards. So if I in wrangle here was to say V at V equals V at N, you should see that I get that now converted to velocity, and I could multiply that up because that's probably going to be a bit small. Let's go times 10. And then we just get a perfectly radial velocity rather than, you know, changing every frame. It's just going to sort of be a bit more of a constant radial thing. So that could be interesting to play with. It's going to be the same though, no matter, you know, whether it's small or big. So it's not going to reduce or scale up as the sphere expands, which means we might have to do some keyframe setting of that velocity. Let's have a look at that. Basically, I just want to get it so that I have this feeling of expansion once the source has been removed. So that it continues to expand. Instead of just going boop and then rising. Just continuing that feeling of expansion. Let's crank up the acceleration strength. Also, you can crank up the scale here as well, so you could animate the scale. Let's try that. There you go, you can start to see those mushroom shapes come back in. And again, weird kind of drift. Don't know what that's about. It might be because of the wind that I have in there. Maybe. Who knows? The wind really shouldn't be starting until a bit higher. Anyway, you know, I think it's an interesting thing. You can see how it's adding that expansion to it. The other thing that we could add here, which would continue the expansion, is just to, up the gas released or the divergence. This is in the solver, it's adding divergence to the simulation. So, we could just increase that a little bit. You can animate that value as well so that it's high at the start and drop it down once the main expansion has taken place. Let's see what that looks like. All right. Let's go with something like that, and we'll try and now add. So if you remember from last time we were looking at this, we had on the disturbance here, we were using this pressure field to drive disturbance. So because I only have one disturbance field here, I want to actually add a bunch of them. So what I'm going to do is put down a gas disturb gas microsolver. So this allows me to generate multiple. So I can just like copy them, merge them together, oops, merge, and then plug them in with our wind. And in fact, we could just leave the wind off for now while we're doing this. I'm going to turn this one off. But have a look at my settings. So I've got block size of 1. I've got pressure field set between -1 and 0. So let's turn that one off. And the value is 0.5, so quite low. I'm just going to select all of these for starters so I can make some changes to all of them. I'm going to turn off threshold range because that uses another field to do extra masking. So I'm going to turn that one off and just use the control field to do the masking. So strength 25, yeah. Mode, I'm going to use block instead of continuous because continuous will change the scale. It'll sort of have like a start off at this reference scale and then get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can't control that. So I want to be able to control the block size, so I want to set it like this explicitly. And I already forgot what I had. I had block size of 1. So let's call this one disturb large. And I'm going to have some different scales here. So this one can be disturb medium and disturb small. And then you could keep going. You could have as many of these as you like. Let's start with the large one. So we're going to go block size 1. And 1 is quite large. If you have a look at our division size, it's twice the voxel size. So it should be quite large. Now, control field, let's add pressure. And we were going between -1 and 0. So let's try that again. Our smoke object, we could come back to our multi-field here. And this is how I was visualizing it. So on the multi-field visualizer, density field density, diffuse field pressure. Set that to infrared. Let's set our diffuse range to the same, -1 to 0. And then we'll be able to see, mapped against the density field, where that pressure range exists. And we should hopefully see some breakup as well. So let's, I might just turn the emission off while I'm doing this. And you can see that red there. And the red is going to be where the pressure is 0 basically, or above. And the purple is where it's -1 or below. Most likely below. You can see this range here, this 0 range. That's where I want to capture. So when my pressure field is -1, it's going to be applying none of the disturbance. But when the pressure field is 0 or above, that's where it will be applying most of the disturbance. So you can see all the tops of these mushroom clouds. So let's go back. And I'm going to crank this up now. Strength. Let's do 100. We got -1 to 0. You can remap it on a ramp if you want to, but yeah, it should be alright. Let's do 100, see what we get. It can be hard to visualize in here now that we have these crazy colors, but you could jump out, have a look at it outside. So we could have a look at it here from the DOP import, just bypass the cache. Even that actually is fine, but we could feed it into a volume visualization if you wanted to. Let's have a look. Maybe also we need to go larger with this large scale one. You can see those details that are getting added, but maybe they're kind of a little bit small. That would be what I would think maybe is the medium size. So perhaps we go like 5 on that scale. Maybe that's a little large. I don't know. Let's see. You got to remember, this is quite big, this thing. You can see here 125 meters, so I don't know what we're at. Kind of here, this might be like 30 or 50 or something. You can see how changing that block size there has created larger shapes. Maybe the strength is a little bit too strong, because we don't want it to look magical. You can see it's starting to create some kind of weird swirly look, which I don't want, you know. So maybe you can see it's an interesting sort of effect, but that's a little bit strong, I think. So let's turn that down to 50. You can change the settings of the roughness and stuff like that as well, which potentially could get rid of some of that swirliness and add a little bit more detail to this. And of course, we're going to add more. So let's just see what this looks like. So the goal is to kind of create those layers of detail. Just think about KFC. So, you know, you've got these large shapes. You can see these large kind of shapes. And then within those large shapes are smaller shapes. And then within those smaller shapes, if you zoomed in to have a look at it, you would have smaller shapes again. So it's all just about creating those layers of detail. If you have a look at a cloud, it's the same kind of idea. Alright, so still that's a little bit swirly, but let's add our other details and see how that might change it. We could also play with the pressure field, the range that this is being applied. If you come back here and adjust this sort of stuff, so you could create an ease. You can see -1 to 0, it's a very hard line almost between red and purple. There's a little bit of gradient there. But if you take that value up, you can see that I can create a kind of softer range. And even that, like -10 to 10, you know, creates a bit of a fall off there. It's good to turn off the disturbance first, then run the pressure field and see what you get. Because adding disturbance will change the pressure field. So you kind of need to get a baseline first. So you can see, -10 to 10, we've got this gradient now between the values. And that might be a bit more interesting. But as soon as we add disturbance, so whatever we do here, and if we decide that that's what we want, we need to go and make that in the control field, -10 to 10. But as soon as we add disturbance, that is going to change and add pressure. Pressure is going to be created because disturbance is pushing the velocities, and that creates pressure. So it's kind of like this self-sustaining thing. So you need to be kind of mindful of that you are going to be affecting the pressure. So you just need to be careful and keep an eye on it. Alright, let's just jump out, have a look at that. Well, there we go. Some interesting kind of things happening. So let's turn on our medium one. And this one I'll do block size 1. We can set the strength to 50. Control field, let's go pressure again. And this one I might do, let's just turn it off again and run that to get our pressure values. Let's have a look. Let it run a little bit longer, so we can get those mushroom clouds happening. And this one maybe I'll try and get it applying to more of the sort of tops. So, you know, I could do like 5, or I could do 10 to 12 or something like that, you know, so I could even like, you know, you could play with that. These are really high pressure values, I suspect, because of the scale. Usually they're not this high. Hopefully I'm not doing something wrong, but I think it's because of the scale. So, you know, you can see, you can really like clip the range as much as you want to just apply it to the very sort of areas that are getting the most velocity. So, you know, we can do something like that. So there's a bit of a range of different levels. So red is where it's going to be full-on disturbance, and these areas will be getting a bit less. So we can try something like that. Let's see. Let's go 5 to 30 in here. Don't necessarily need the ramp on. Block size 1, strength 50. Yep. Okay, let's try that. Jump out. Once you've kind of done this, then you don't need to do it again necessarily. I mean, you could copy this shaping setup to subsequent explosions that you do. We can copy this to the ground dust that we want to do that has similar kind of cloud-like appearance. So you can see that extra detail being added as another layer on top. It's kind of that idea of, you know, fractal geometry where you have this just like recursive levels of detail that are the same. It's like, you know, you've got the large shapes, and then within those large shapes it's broken into smaller shapes and smaller shapes and smaller shapes, you know, into infinity. So it's that kind of idea that you're trying to recreate. This is all very low resolution still. And adding the disturbance as well helps with that feeling of expansion, because it's creating those pushing, you know, shapes. Alright, let's go again, another one. Gas disturb small. Let's go 0.5 on this one, which is the voxel size. So we've kind of, you know, anything below that is probably not going to show up super well at this resolution. But let's do 25 at 0.5, control field pressure. And what have we got? So we've got here, we're doing -10 to 10. Here we're doing 5 to 30. I might not do negative on this one. Maybe I'll do positive so that no negative stuff happens. That might be just adding too much everywhere. And this one, let's do like 0 to... Let's do the same. Let's do 0 to 10 on that one. See what that looks like. 25, so we got 50, 50, and 50. Can we also create trails and explosions? Yeah, we certainly can, Hardy. I mean, this explosion, I didn't want to create like that sort of classic Avengers explosion, just because that's what everyone's doing these days. So I wanted to do something different. But yeah, of course, yeah. And I want to take a look at those kind of lines that we were seeing here. These, I think that could be really interesting to have a look at, and see, you know, how we would do that. I mean, I have ideas of how I would do it, so I want to kind of investigate that. And that, you know, would be similar for trails. So there you go. That final one there just sort of started to help add a little bit of that extra sort of detail. You can see right at the start, you know, there's a lot of that really fine stuff there, and these shapes are a little bit kind of funny. So what I might do is go back to my source. Let's have a look. Let's get a bit more detail in our source. You can see, oh, well, maybe that's where the noise is coming from, just our blobby, bubbly source, which isn't that nice. Let's add a point VOP to our points here. And we've got these radial normals. So perhaps we could use those to create like a displacement based on noise. And we'll add N to P. If I output that to P again, you can see that that just pushes the points outward. But if I multiply those normals by turbulent noise, do I ever use any other shaping settings? Pretty much just disturbance. Yeah, look, I mean, for a lot of the time it is just disturbance. Shredding I don't tend to use that much for explosions. Shredding is good for flamey detail, but not really needed for explosions. Sharpening, certainly not. Turbulence, you can add a bit of turbulence, but you have to be careful with turbulence because it can create strong downward forces, which when you're dealing with fire and smoke, if anything moves down of its own free will, or, you know, it's caught in some sort of velocity field that makes it go down, it tends to look magical and not realistic. So turbulence can be good for a little bit of ambient sort of wafting, but you have to make the value really low. But yeah, I tend not to use that because of that fact that it can create these strong downward pushes, which then tend to look weird. Confinement is good. So we'll add confinement at the end. And we'll do that with our own confinement node, which is the same. But yeah, confinement is good because that just amplifies the swirls. So it'll take an existing swirl and just add more to it to make it even swirlier. And that's good for adding fine detail. But in terms of shaping, yeah, mainly disturbance is and layering the disturbance like this is all that I need for most things. Alright, so what are we doing here? Displacement based on noise. So you can see as I change this noise, it's moving these points. And we can have a look at this in color as well. So let's take frequency down. Let's see that. Ah, there we go. So what do I want to do? I'm thinking about, you know, the kind of cloud-like shapes and thinking about how they might look. And then let's see if that has any effect. Oh, it's not a great deal. The other thing I could do here is add a cloud noise, but it's kind of expensive. You can see that my particle scale is quite large, which is creating these, you know, real bubbly kind of shapes. What do I want to do? Oh, let's add a cloud noise and see if that kind of see if it kind of helps. All right, cloud. Oh, that's not what I want. Cloud noise. I don't love using the cloud noise because it is kind of quite slow, but it can be nice to add those cloud-like details. You just got to get the size right. Spatial scale. Let's see. I can't remember which way this is meant to go. Let's try 2. I want to see those details get bigger. Hey, there we go. Let's go 5. With a high amplitude, basically what happens is this expands, and that's why it takes a long time, because it adds a lot more voxels to the volume. There we go. You can see it, like, it's really making that cloud shape. So let's turn the amplitude down again. Okay. And this is going to be cooking every frame, so yeah, that's yeah, something to consider. Oh, there we go. Oops. Don't do that. So it creates that expansion, just like the disturbance is doing in the simulation, but it's doing it on the source. So if we get a nice kind of cloudy looking source, that looks pretty good. Then hopefully we'll get a nice looking sim as well. So this is only doing it on density though. You can see, you can't see my other screen. Here we go. You can see density, fuel, and temperature here. But after my cloud noise, my density is gone. Dun, dun, dun. Let's have a look here. What we might need to do. Let's see. Infection, noise mask. So this will be running in here. Let's crack it open and have a look. This will be running in here basically only on density. There's a cloud noise node. So basically, yeah, it's a VOP, a volume VOP, doing a whole bunch of different things. But, here it is getting rid of all my other fields in that cleanup node. Oh, there we go. They're all back. Except there's one called SDF, which I'm guessing is the one they wanted to get rid of. So let's just delete that. Whoa, look at that. Delete not selected. There we go. Okay. So this is only being applied to the density field by the looks of it. Let's have a look what we have here. Let's see what happens. This is not something that I do all that often. I'm just trying things. I think, as I may have said in the past, the key to good pyro simulations is a good detailed explosion. Or a source, I should say. So, you get it all right in the source, and then you don't have to do as much work in the simulation to add extra details. If it's all kind of there when you bring it in, then it's gonna come through in the simulation. And there we go. You can see that looking a lot nicer now on those first few frames than what we had previously, because it's just adding that to the sim. So, compared to what I had originally, which was this big ball, having that nice kind of cloud-like detail is just coming into the simulation, so I don't really have to worry about it. But it has, you can see, before it even gets to the pyro side of things, it has to do that cloud noise. So you might want to cache that to disk. We might want to turn it off after a certain time. So like maybe we just switch it out or something like this after frame. When does it start shrinking? Very heavy. Let's have a look. Frame 5. Let's switch it off at frame 5. So we'll say, alright, frame 6. So we'll say $F greater than frame 5. That will switch to the other one at frame 6. So you can see here now my switch is going to switch to cloud noise if I go back to frame 5. So I'll do 5 frames of the cloud noise and then switch it off. The other alternative to this would be to go back, like maybe even all the way here, and add, and let's experiment with this. Let's add detail here. Kind of the same way that I was adding it right down the end here with this VOP. Was it this one? Nope, this one. Yep, with the normals. So add this, here. Try and create that kind of displacement on the surface to hopefully pass through to those points. So when you do your points from volume, that's going to kind of hopefully pass through. And that might work as well. But yeah, you can see it, a little bit, but still we've got these blobs. So I think this switch is going to do the trick. Let's have a look. Feed it in there. Okay. So it should be pretty slow for the first 5 frames, and then hopefully once that switches, it doesn't break, hopefully it will speed up. And I can see it down the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but it's telling me that it's cooking that cloud noise, spending a long time evaluating that cloud noise. You can see everything that it's doing in SOPs down here, so it's good to keep an eye on that. And if you like, oh, why is this taking so long? Have a look down here and see what it's doing. It's hanging on this cloud noise for ages. So maybe that's something that you should investigate, or maybe that's, expected. Let's see. So there we go, we got to 6, and now our source, I'm not seeing the cloud noise anymore. You can see it's starting to go a little bit faster. So that's good. Alright, let's take a look out here, see what our shapes kind of look like. Okay, very cloud-like. Our source looks a little bit better now. And we get that kind of expansion afterwards, which is good. Alright, so we've got pretty slow simulations. It's going to take a little while to cook out, but let's just have a look let it run for a few more frames. See what it's doing. And we're only viewing the density at the moment as well. We're not even, looking at the emission side of things. But hopefully that's all still fine down here. Let's have a look. There we go. Big boom. That's a fire. Look at that. So I think we could probably go for another level of disturbance, maybe, or probably be good to test with a higher resolution sim. But obviously we don't have time to just sit here and watch it. Oh, I mean we do, but it would be a bit boring. So yeah, I think a higher resolution sim would be good, just to see what sort of extra details we get. But potentially a smaller scale block size in another disturbance might really, work as well. So let's have a look through the camera. It's getting quite big now, and you can see it's actually clipping the front of our bounds. So I might come out here. There's my initial bounds. Where's my max bounds? Here's my max bounds. Let's make this bigger. Hey Zoe, how's it going? I'm all right. All right, let's make this. How much did you miss? You've missed 48 minutes of explosion fun, but not much really. And you can always go back and watch it. I am now about to... What am I going to do? I'm going to have a look at this kind of bottom Shockwave section now, because this I think will help overall. So we've got our large kind of explosion cloud details. Yeah, they still need a bit of work, but I'm sort of mostly happy with it. The large scale I think still isn't quite working. No, not. I mean, look, you could do this on a laptop, but you would have to scale everything way back. You just need to. Turn all the settings down. You could. Hey Audrey, how's it going? Okay, so yeah, look, I've done explosions on a laptop as well. And it's definitely possible. You just have to be kind of careful, and you just need to manage it. Yeah, I'm mostly better, Audrey. I've still got a bit of a cough, but hopefully no coughing fits today. See how we go. I might make it to the end. All right. Oh, I had a note here. I turned on Enlarge fields to contain sources because without that, it clips pretty bad at the start. Yeah. So by turning on Enlarge fields to contain sources, it will resize the pyro to to fit anything that's in the source. So you can see without that, it's clipping it pretty badly to a box. So by doing that, and I think you can turn on Enlarge by full tiles as well, which does make it a little bit bigger. Turning on that will make sure that what you bring into the source is going to, get put into the simulation. I still found there was a bit of clipping going on with that. So, maybe also increasing padding or, playing with some of these settings might also be necessary. But that's not too bad. Alright. Let's have a look at this bottom section. And I think what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to start with a Taurus to determine where that should go. So we've got our sphere here, which is our explosion, and then we've got this torus, so I'm going to just increase the radius. The good thing with the torus is you've got this sort of main radius, but then you've got the thickness of the torus as well, so you can kind of create a nice shockwave that way. Let's have a look, template that. There we go. So there's my explosion, there's my shockwave. So basically I can animate this kind of, you know, coming out like that. Let's do that. Let's animate it. So I'll go 0 on here, and I'll set that to 0 as well. And then we've got this kind of 4-frame expansion happening. So let's go 30. This one we need to set a keyframe. Let's go 40. There we go. So there's our kind of expansion of a circular shockwave. And this, what am I thinking? Let's take this guy, this sort of normal base displacement, add it to the torus. Let's put a facet node down so we have normals. And then I'm just going to put a promote in here so I can amp up that disturbance. There we go. Excuse me, sorry. And there you go. So I'm getting some noisy kind of disturbance. And what am I going to do here? I'm going to, let's make that 3D noise, 1D noise. Maybe that's why I'm getting that weird shift happening. No. Oops. There we go. Let's see. Play with the frequency. Change the noise type. Original Perlin will give you negative values as well, so maybe Alligator probably is a good one. So it is mostly positive, so yeah. What I'm doing, you know, what I'm kind of imagining is these, you know, peaks and troughs in these shapes of the shockwaves that you get. So like, you know, larger shapes and smaller shapes. It's kind of what I'm imagining. You didn't use a mountain node? No, I didn't. I used VOP. I mean, mountain, you could use a mountain, but, you know, it's if you have a look, a mountain is an attribute VOP with a noise being added or multiplied. Oh, there we go, added to P. So, I am just doing that myself in a VOP. You can use a mountain if you want, but I like to be able to control it, and you know, I want to do specific things, so that's why I do it in a VOP. So let's have a look. Okay, something like that. Now, just thinking about interesting ways to create that cloud kind of shape that I was doing with the cloud noise. I could use a cloud noise again, but as I've already kind of expressed, it's very slow. So perhaps we could look at other methods for creating it. I'm just going to play with this scale a little bit. And potentially, you know, we could do away with the torus or the noise and do this other method that I'm thinking of, which is to scatter points onto the geometry and then copy spheres onto them. So just like this. Alright, they're all very small. Let's create a p-scale. So I'm going to say at p-scale equals 10. There we go, that's quite large. Let's do at p-scale equals rand at pt-num. Okay, so we've got randomization. Let's fit that. Oh, actually, let's just multiply it by 10. It's easier. There we go. So, yeah, you can see now I've got this random assortment of spheres, which looks a little bit cloud-like. Not super cloud-like at the moment, but a little bit cloud-like. If I was to take those spheres, scatter points on them as well, and then copy more points to them. Oops. There. Merge that with that. Hey, look at that. Let's increase this. Turn off relax. I'm not sure if you're joking, Zoe, or you're asking me to do that. You could do that if you wanted to, but don't really need to. Here comes the cough. Alright, so let's put this random on this one as well. Didn't copy. There we go, and we'll do that. Might be fine. I mean, we can multiply it up if we wanted to. Semi-joking. Yeah, okay. I mean, look, if you were making a tool and you wanted that kind of control, then yeah. Instead of doing the fit 0, 1, because I was probably going to fit it between like 1 or 0 and 10 anyway, if I just multiply this up by 10, that's going to give me that same result, so I don't need to write out the whole fit expression. But yeah, it just depends, and if you create channels and sliders and things, it just makes a flexible tool, but I'm just kind of doing this in a very quick way, so I don't necessarily need to do all of that. Now what I'm thinking is I might do this one more time to create that kind of, fractal feeling. Fractal feeling sounds like an album. Of spheres upon spheres upon spheres. So let's go and merge this one. And change the scale. Let's go 2, 1. Up the scatter. Okay, so you can see, you get this kind of spheres upon spheres upon spheres, and that sort of gives you that interesting sort of cloud-like spherical shape, and then we would need to add noise. So what we could do from there is VDB from polygons, maybe? Turn that into an SDF. It's going to be quite big at voxel size of 0.1. Let's do voxel size 1. Even that might be quite large. Hear my computer fan heating up. You know what? Let's do... These are spheres at the moment, so what I might do is put down a convert to convert them all into polygons. Oops. Which might end up being quite a lot of polygons, 91,000. What I might do is just turn this and just keep an eye on it. Do it as a polygon. So that's 80,000 there. 800,000. That one's the high one, but it shouldn't be too bad. 7 million, that's alright. Alright, let's take a look at this VDB. Oh, okay, so that's quite large. Low res, only 195,000 voxels, so let's take that down. I guess the scale is what's, hard for this thing to reconcile. Let's take it to 2.5. So you can see, it's starting to feel a bit cloud-like. Obviously this is an SDF. We'll flick it over to be density. Once I get the detail right. 0.2. Ooh, there we go. Starting to see the polygonal detail, which maybe we don't want. Alright, that's 7 million. It's still really low res, but I think the scale of this scene is probably hard for the VDB to resolve. Let's take it down to 0.4. So now, instead of... Because what I can kind of see is that a lot of the detail is sort of happening below instead of happening above, and I'm not getting those large peaks. So, let's have a look. what I might actually do is yet another layer of detail. And this is, this is just an experiment in, ways of creating interesting kind of patterns or interesting shapes. I'm going to turn off relax. Should always probably turn that off. And I'm going to, what am I going to do? This one, I think what I'll do is actually take the amount down and the scale up. Let's try that. What do I want to do? This one. Scale up this one as well. Take the amount down. Okay. So then we got this one finally. There's probably too many there. So just trying to create a good kind of mix of scales. Excuse me. And then, I mean, yeah, I don't know if this is working exactly, but let's try just another one over here. I'm going to do a different seed on this one. Wrangle. Could even do a larger scatter on top of that one. Yeah, that might be interesting. Alright, let's see what that looks like as a VDB. Hey Xenon, how's it going? So, if I turn off surface and turn on density, then we should see it as a fog. There we go. So, I mean, you can see it's still lacking some of that detail, but it's kind of, it's cloud-like. It's an interesting kind of look. And then again, this stuff is half below the ground plane, so let's go and take our little p.y thing that we did and crush them down, flatten them to the ground. There we go. So now we've got these cool kind of little bubbly things on the ground. And again, we could take this side and merge it over with this one so that we get a scattering of points across those. And that will just help. Okay. Okay. So look at that. So, this is a good way to make clouds, really. And if we step back. So one issue with this is because this is all based on P scale, or PT num, it's going to jump around a lot every frame because our Taurus is originally scaling. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break this. I'm going to delete those keyframes, and I'm going to do this scaling down here after this has already been decided. So that means this is all done on a static frame like this, and then I'm just going to scale that at the end. That'll be much faster. So we do something like that. I don't know how that'll look, but let's try it. So we'll go 1, 0. There we go. Something like that. Should be a lot faster. Alrighty, let's feed that in as a new source. So I'm going to call that null out Shockwave or dust. Let's call it out dust clouds. It doesn't have any velocity at the moment, so it's probably not going to work super well, but let's just bring it in and see what it looks like with everything else. The disturbance will have an effect on it. So, second context geometry. We don't have temperature, we don't have velocity, we don't have fuel. We might delete fuel because we're not going to have fuel with that one. We will probably have velocity, we might have temperature, but we definitely have density. Let's make sure I brought that in. Oh, I didn't bring it into second context. There we go. Let's get rid of that guy. Alrighty. Let's just turn off our other one first. And I might turn off my disturbances for a second. Let's just see what this looks like. Okay. About. Hey, look at that. Cool. Alright, so you can see how that's kind of printing there. It sort of starts here, little clouds, and then sort of stamps as it goes along. So we could, you know, we could potentially change that, but I think that's fine. And then I probably just want to turn it off because it's going to keep emitting from this point and just getting really, really dense. So at frame 5, I'll turn it off. And I'll just do that in the activation. So I'll say $F greater than frame 4. That means, actually, I'll give it one more frame. I'll do frame 5. Oops. Other way around. Less than. So it evaluates to 1 when it's less than 5 and 0 when it's greater than 5. Alright. There we go. The source goes off and it's allowed to evolve. Now, even though I don't have any velocity in here, once I turn on this guy, we're going to get advection happening because that has a lot of velocity in it. It's this big expansion, you know, and then rising. So, if we just turn that on and let it play, what we should see is that these things come out, this thing expands, and then we get this kind of suction occurring. That might be enough. At the moment, we're still cooking the cloud noise on this guy. So, you know, we could think about redoing the source the same way that I did that one. But, yeah, whatever. Really nice, like, if we're just looking at the silhouette of this, silhouette's looking quite nice. Some really nice kind of shapes happening with that new source that I've added. Alright, so the cloud noise should go off now, and now we should start to see it go a little bit faster. I'm just going to hit stop here and jump out. I might hit save while I remember. Okay, I've turned off my disturbances as well, so remember that it's going to look a bit smoother now. But what we should start to see how it's pushing them. Which is cool. And let's see what happens when it rises. So you can see that suction starting to lift up now. And this is very smooth without the disturbance. So the disturbance is definitely necessary. Let's see what this looks like. you go. You can see that. It's starting to get sucked up now. It's interesting that not much of this is staying on the ground. I kind of thought, you know, that maybe it would sort of leave a little bit stuck to the ground. Doesn't seem to be. So what I'm thinking is I might actually just continue to source some density on the ground as well. And that, you know, hopefully then will fill in the area. Because at the moment we've got these kind of clouds. Have a look. We've got these clouds. Then all of this area here is all kind of vacant. So I'm just going to do a super simple source as well, which is just going to be a big circle. Do ZX, radius. Just like that. I'm going to scatter points onto it. Turn off relax. Crank it up. Create a quick noise. Oops. That might do. Oh, there we go. Oh, let's do original Perlin. It's a bit more cloud-like. Oh, frequency. Alright, something like that. And then I'm just going to say... Oops. I'm just going to say at density equals at cd.x. It's just going to set the color values to be density, and then I'm going to rasterize that. Volume rasterize attributes. Density. There we go. Cool. Okay, I might... what have I got here? Let me create... actually, I'll make this a polygon. Oops. Give it a whole bunch of divisions. Give it a facet. Pre-compute normals. Let's see, where are they pointing? Nowhere. Alright. The old attribute VOP again. Because I've created this circle at 0, if I subtract... Oops. Oh, actually, if I just do a length on P and plug that into N... Oh, no. Actually, if I just plug P into N... There we go. It gives me radial normals, because basically that's just saying normals is sort of based on where the position is in relation to the origin. So this has transformed this position vector into a directional vector by plugging it into normals. So it's pointing that way, away from the origin. And it's radial because it's a circle. But what we can use is the same kind of idea of displacing based on normals. If I create a turbulent noise, multiply that value, so you can see how that changes the size of these vectors. You can see how those are changing. Take that down. Oops. Take that down like that. We could run that into a fit so we could control it a little better. There you go. So you can see, you know, I could do like 2 and 0 or whatever. So if I multiply those together and then add that to P, I can basically create a wonky circle, only in that axis. So let's change that. Let's make this original Perlin. There we go. Play with the frequency. Hey, look at that. Alright, let's give it more divisions. Give it a lot of divisions, you'll get a lot of detail out of it, so let's sort of play with that. If you wanted to. Looks like the frequency is just like super low on this scale, which is weird. There we go. That's kind of what I'm after. Something like that. Scatter. There we go. Just roughen the edges. Just took a little bit longer than I was expecting, but that was the goal. to create rough edges. And if I put a fit in here and just not do it all the way to 0, I'll get a little bit of value there. You can see how there's still value there. Just so it's not a complete hole. Alright, cool. So the other thing we could do actually is at p scale equals rand at pt norm again, just to create variation, you know. And you know, you could put that between a fit 0.1 and you know, between 0.5 and 1.5, for example, so it doesn't go super small. That might be cool. All right, let's feed that into the third input. Make sure that's called density. Yes. Duplicate. Third context geometry. I'll leave that set to less than... I don't know, let's just leave it on 1. We'll get rid of all these. Temperature, velocity. I'm just going to source density. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, I didn't scale it, maybe? Yeah, I didn't scale it. Maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know, let's see what happens. Let's actually come out so we can see it a little bit clearer. So I would need to put that same transform that I did on the on the other one. Although an instant kind of emission gives that feeling of like it was there and then it's just like poof. So it's kind of cool. Like it does give it that effect of being really quick. Sometimes what you can do with explosions to make them feel like that as well is to just strip out some of the frames at the start of the simulation so that it goes from nothing to big. Like you could start the explosion there, for example, just strip out the first 2 frames so you don't see that expansion and you just get like, and then the evolution. Hopefully now having some density on the floor will just fill in that area and it'll be advected up as well and pushed around. Because it's kind of going to be constantly emitting, it's just going to, yeah, it's just going to be there and tie everything down, hopefully. So we'll let it run. Waiting, waiting, waiting. So much waiting. Alright. Okay. So you can imagine, you know, with those trails that we're going to look at doing, these sort of straight line things, the same thing is going to happen if I bring them in as a source. Hey Mohammed, yeah, it's getting there, isn't it? It's all about layering. At the start, I know it didn't look that great, but I wanted to focus on getting that motion right, getting that detail in there, and then once I've done that, everything that I add to it is just going to hopefully work. That's kind of you know, what I like to do. Instead of throwing it all in there, then it becomes kind of hard to dial in the settings. Just get one thing working, and then okay, that's good. Let's chuck in the other things. You can see this probably should be turned off. Maybe we should turn it off around 20. This bottom dust is just gonna just add a bit too much to the scene. But it certainly gives you that connection to the ground, which is what I was after. You can see now it's filled in all that space, which is great. And it's getting sucked up by the main explosion, which is cool. A good way to look at something like this is through a slice as well. A volume slice. Because it can be sort of hard to see sometimes what is going on. If you just pick, density for example, and you can kind of see in a slice what's going on in your simulation. It can be quite interesting. You could pick a different one as well. Temperature maybe. Can be a good one to look at. And you can obviously play with the range. This can be good, as a diagnostic thing as well, just for, trying to figure out what your values are or where the main values are. Sometimes I find that's useful. Alright. Let's play it a little bit more. I want to see a bit more of this height. See what happens. Some more breakup on this as well. It's very solid. Kind of that new ground dust that I added, it's very solid, so maybe taking that P scale down to 0, that noise value I raised so that it didn't reduce it everywhere. Maybe I should reduce it in parts, and that will overall help it not feel so solid. Perhaps even adding an animated noise to this, so you can see these obvious streaks happening. If that was an animated noise that was phasing, maybe even just phasing slowly, that might help to stop that kind of streaking. Very uniform emission that's happening there. Alright, let's have a look. So we're getting nice advection happening. Yeah, this is all very dense. Let's check it out through the volume here. So you can see there's no temperature in this stuff, so the main fireball, looking very smooth, is still, where the action is, but yeah, there's no temperature here, which is why this is shading black. Our smoke is being shaded based on temperature. There's no temperature there, so that's why it's going black at the moment. Let me make that white. There we go. So I think that's definitely on the right track. Just need to work on our sources a little bit. Let's have a look. Our dust clouds, I think, are okay. But our little circular one needs a bit of work. Okay, let's go 0.01 or 0.1. Let's go here, remove that, maybe up the frequency a little bit. You can see that noise moving through. Okay, and if I change the offset, so let's animate that or promote the offset. $F divided by 24. Oh. This is time based. Is this time based? No. Why is that so slow? I must be templating something. There we go. So there we go. You can see a slow phasing happening. Don't want it to be super noticeable because you will see it in the sim, but just a slow one hopefully might look okay. Let's just do a quick little flip book. Might be a bit fast. Yeah. Definitely too fast. So let's just go and make that, let's try 64. And this is all very low res at the moment as well for, being able to get this done. So taking all these resolutions up, decreasing the voxel size to make it higher res, it'll all add more detail to it. So yeah. Alright, let's have a look at that. It's probably okay. It's still a little quick, but I don't know if we'll notice it. Let's try it. See what happens. what phasing will help is that, you know, if I didn't have phasing, this would just be a hole the whole time. But because I have some noise phasing, that hole gets filled in certain areas, you know, over 20 frames. So, you know, it will create that feeling of stuff everywhere. But hopefully just with a bit more variation. Let's just make the particle scale a little bit less as well, so it's not super blobby. Okay, and I'm going to turn on this, because without it, it all looks awful. And let's see what it looks like. Oh, let's add the scale. I mean, yeah, I don't mind it without the scale, but let's add it in just so it's kind of the same as the other one. So I'll do that. So we should get that sort of thing happening. There we go. We could also do a trail off of that, which might be interesting to create some velocity. Let's see what that looks like. Crazy velocities, but you can see it stops. As soon as that stops moving, that velocity stops. Might be interesting. What it does give me the ability to do with velocity attribute is I can turn on velocity blur as well, which gives me that kind of smearing effect. Which, you know, that could just help to get rid of stepping. So we could do that kind of thing. So that's not even having velocity in here, just turning on velocity blur. Up the samples, you get a nice, smooth kind of emission. That might be kind of cool. I don't know. It's hard to say. Let's add V as well. And on my source, I'll turn that on. Add V, vel, vector. Oh, I just had a thought. Maybe I screwed something up here. Oh, no, I did set it to vector. Let's check this one. Yeah, that one's vector. I thought maybe I accidentally left them as scalar. Vector, add. Alright, let me just turn these off. And we'll see what this one looks like with that crazy high velocity. It's probably too strong. Oops. I mean, it's kind of cool. It gives you that feeling of a shockwave. That's not what I was going for with this pass. But, I don't know. Maybe, actually, we'll leave it on. Because it's kind of cool. Yeah. Why not? Alright. Let's see what that looks like. So we've got a big ball shape. Yeah, I think the instant emission is it gives it that punch, Mohammed. It gives it that kind of like just single frame. This thing is moving really fast. It's expanding. You know, if you look at a lot of reference for nuclear explosions as well, there's that flash. You know, there's that really bright flash that happens at the moment of detonation that obscures the view as well. So you kind of have that flash, and then all of a sudden there's this giant mushroom cloud there. So, you know, you could play with those ideas as well. But yeah, certainly, I think stripping frames out, sometimes it can be hard to do that instant or that rapid expansion in Pyro. So sometimes just letting it simulate, you know, maybe you have it expand over a few frames, but then just stripping those out of the cache. And just starting on frame 5, you know, can be an interesting thing. So it's like on, and then it's off, and then boom, you know, it's there. So just kind of, yeah, going straight into it. Let's have a look at that. What that's starting to look like. Hey, look at that. That's cool. The cool thing about adding velocity to shockwaves as well is that it can pull some of the temperature out with it. So you can see that that's actually now pulling some of this fuel and temperature along with it. Actually, not fuel. Fuel's not being advected. But it's creating a force in here, which is adding some really interesting stuff that we didn't have before. So that's cool. I think that's looking pretty nice. And with the shaping settings on as well, you know, we're getting some really nice stuff happening. So yeah, like what I'm talking about with the stripping frames out, basically what you could do, you know, because that doesn't look very good. It's just a like fuzzy ball of nothing. But that's a kind of good frame. And then we've got, you know, that kind of frame there. So you can kind of go like... I'm just going to... Oh, actually, I'll just create a null. Nothing there. Maybe I'll put something there. So, you know, you've got your object that you want to blow up. And then at a certain frame, just swap those around. So, you know, we've got 4 frames of, or like, you know, a couple of frames of this guy, and then all of a sudden you go $F greater than 3, like that. So you've got boom, and then it and then it evolves. So you're skipping a bunch of frames, and maybe that's too many. Maybe we should just skip 2 frames. But we're skipping that initial kind of ball frame, which doesn't look that good, and just going straight into a much larger expansion. So, you know, instead of this, let's have a look, try and cache it. Oh, it's caching again. That's annoying. Oh, let it go. Because it really does change it, and it gives it that impact, which is really cool. And sometimes to get the effect that you want, that explosion that you want, you might need a bit of a slower expansion and build up, not that super rapid one, just to get the feeling that you want, and then you just strip the frames out afterwards. So the way that comes on at the moment, you know, is a bit weird. That there maybe is a little bit too much. I don't know. It might play fine, but it feels a little bit too quick to me. Yeah, it's getting there. It's definitely it's definitely come a long way in an hour and a half. And you know, it's all about layering up. Alright, I'll stop it at frame 10. And let's have a look at that. So you can see that expansion happening. And because of that big jump, it feels a little bit weird. But yeah, you can read that expansion happening. So, and it doesn't feel super punchy. But if I was to do this one instead, maybe tweak it a little bit. Okay, let's do that. 10 frames. Might need to tweak the... Yeah, it's not it's not perfect. I mean, you need to hang on this one for a longer time, I think, to really appreciate it. But probably I would want to skip into it at that frame. So let's change it. Let's get frame 3. Boom. It's hard to appreciate it on only 10 frames, but yeah, I don't know. It's not quite working, but yeah, you get the idea. All right, so we've got that. We've got our explosion. It's looking okay. I think, yeah, probably maybe just tweaking this transform. Maybe making it like 1 or 2 frames slower might help. Anyway, let's look at now the kind of those lines, whatever they're called. whatever name they have. These things. Now, this is our old cache that I have, but that's okay. We can use this, seeing as we have it. Let's have a think about these lines. If you try to do lines like this in Pyro, inevitably they end up looking a little bit too soft. Because the voxel size that you would need to make them look as crisp as they are would be too high. So what I would end up doing, or what I usually end up doing, is creating them from points. So let's create a particle sim. Or even lines to represent those. So I might do that, because, you know, I'm in the mood for creating things in a nice procedural geometry way. Let's create these long lines which represent these kind of shapes. Because I don't think you actually see the lines kind of shoot up. They just kind of appear. Yeah, you can see them there. I don't know if we can see this one kind of exploding. Yeah, I don't know. There they are there. It's another kind of image of them. They go really high. So yeah, I'm going to assume that we don't see them, but we could still use this and, you know, just tweak it a little bit. So let's make them quite high. 60. I'm going to go 70. And I'm going to use copy and transform to just instance these lines. And it looked like they were only really on one side, which is odd, but yeah, there you go. They're only on the left. So I'm just going to translate these -x a bunch of times. Look at that. That's even lines. Let's do that. I'm actually going to just leave the lines as 2-point lines, so they have a point at the bottom and a point at the top. And then I'm going to do, how many times have I done this today? Attribute Vault, Turbulent Noise, pause. I'm going to add this to P, and because they only have 2 points, this is not going to turn them into noisy lines. It is just going to actually move the lines themselves around. Might move the bottom differently to the top, but it's just going to sort of en masse move these lines around. So let's see if we can get it. Oh, there we go. It's kind of like doing a jitter, but basically I'm just breaking up this really kind of even spacing. Take that down, make that frequency quite large. Try original Perlin. Roughness, I don't want it to be too crazy, but because they are quite even in the reference. I don't know, let's go. Something like that, it's probably fine. Now, I'm going to resample these lines, and that's going to add points along their length. We might not need that many. Let's just start with something a bit less. We almost made it without completely dying. Alright, now, if I add a density attribute and just say @density equals 1, and then rasterize these, volume rasterize attributes, density, beautiful volume lines. Take the particle scale way down and the voxel size. Have a look at the res. We've got 4 million voxels. Let's push it higher. 0.025, 0.1, you know, that's probably going to be quite high, 0.01, but yeah, there we go, 500 million, so that's too much. Let's go 0.05. Now the resample is our resolution, so in terms of how many points. So let's take that down. There you go. Nice lines. So after the resample, I'm going to take this attribute VOP, clone it, and put it here. And you can see that now, because of the resample adding extra points, that now is adding a lot of details. So let's go and make that three-dimensional noise, take that amplitude down and the frequency way down, roughness as well, and you can see now I can create that wavy kind of look, right? Let's go back and have a look at the reference. So, you know, overall there's this kind of, there's a little bit of wiggling to them and a broader noise. So let's say that this is the broader noise. And then there's also going to be another one, which is high frequency. There we go. Starting to look pretty cool. All right. Now, there's some lines, nice volume lines. Let's have a look at how we can manipulate these. So we could take them into Pyro, but again, they're going to look a bit soft in Pyro. So what I might do here is run them into pops. So I'm going to do a pop network. And there's still lines at this point, so what I might do is put an add down. Delete geometry, but keep points. Now they're just points. And run them into a pop network. All points. I'm just going to birth them on the first frame, so $F less than 2. That should just create points. There we go. Now we've got our simulation here. Explosion V1. It's not the right one, but, you know, that's okay. Here, I'm going to create a null. And I've got here velocity X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to say out vels. And I can plug that into the popnet as well. Pop advect by volumes. Second context. It's looking for the field named vel, so you need to make sure that is what you're pulling out, vel. It goes in as V off your sources, but out of the Pyro solver it is the vel field, so just need to make sure that that's the one you're pulling in. Velocity scale, it's a multiplier on that velocity field. Air resistance is kind of like drag, so the higher the air resistance, the greater these will stick to that velocity field. So you can increase the air resistance to make them follow much faster. And you can see here it's got advection types, force, velocity, or position. Position will just be kind of it very exact and move them exactly how the velocity field is moving, but you kind of want force or velocity so that they, once they're outside the velocity field, they continue to evolve and move. Let's see what it looks like. Cool. Very fast too, which is great. So you see we get that advection from the PyroSim, and this is great for so many things, not just this. I mean, you could imagine having a whole bunch of dirt on the ground if I even just took this particle stuff that I created here, these points on the ground, and ran that through a popnet. You know, it doesn't look all that good with this simulation, but you know, you can imagine what you could do with that. So yeah, lots of cool stuff to be done with pop advect. Excuse me. So it's a bit strong, really, and perhaps our lines are too much over our simulation. So if we turn on our guide, you can see our ball is actually here. If we look at our reference, I'm not really seeing them kind of above it so much. They're more sort of right next to it. There's a couple that are, you know, so maybe we just need to sort of move them across a little bit. Do that. Our transform here. Let's move them across a touch. There you go, look at that. Alright, so let's play with the settings a little bit. air resistance. Let's crank it up, see what that does. Turn the velocity scale down, maybe. So you can see that still moves them, but it's not gonna completely pull them. It's kind of cool. We could also add a pop drag, which is going to slow down those particles. Once they're kind of out of that velocity field, they might just slow right down again, which could be cool. This is interesting here too. I mean, this is really the edge of our the edge of our velocities. So you can see they're getting picked up right at the edge there. An interesting thing you can try here with the velocity field is you put down a primitive node and go to the volumes tab, and you can actually adjust the border, what happens at the border of your volume. If you set it to streak, and I can do this just on velocity, so vel.star, and in fact, I should put a blast down just so this is just the velocities here. I'm going to do vel.star, delete non-selected, then I just have velocities, then I don't need to worry about doing this. Let's see what happens. See how they all move now? Basically what happens when you do streak is that it takes the last value at that edge edge voxel and streaks it across. So it continues to affect, and when you use it in advection, instead of that being a hard cutoff now, these all get that same velocity, and it looks like they're all getting advected by it, which is cool. So there you go. Let's turn that off. And, you know, maybe those ones we want to kind of not have move as much. Because this is streaking across, they're getting exactly the same value that this one is here. So they're kind of all moving together, and maybe that's a little much. It's really not too bad, but, you know, you could think of doing like a distance-based thing where, you know, maybe a volume sample to find out how far these are away from the mushroom cloud, and then affect them less if they're further away. You can think about that. This is something we need to be careful of, how broken up these are getting, because when we rasterize them, so we're just plugging the rasterize now instead of being here on the points now afterwards. Actually, doesn't look too bad, but as they separate away from each other, like here you can see them stretching out a little bit and seeing individual points. You will start to see that in the volume. So that's just something to be mindful of. As they start to separate from each other, those points, you will start to see those individual little dots. So you don't want to do too much to it that's going to spread out those points and see those individual little points. You could potentially just add more. That might work. But yeah, it's just something to be mindful of. So basically then, you know, that is your renderable object, and you can go and merge that with your simulation. So you end up with, yeah, this kind of effect of the mushroom cloud being tied to those particle streams. And the same thing can be said for trails. So this would be the same way that I would do really fine trails to create the fidelity that we need, and so that we don't have to simulate it. Do it with particles. Create particle trails. So there you go, you can see that. It's a little bit squiggly here. I think that squiggliness is probably just coming from the noise that I put in here. Here, this one. Let's turn that down, that second one there. Well, let's just turn it off for starters and see what that looks like. Because the other thing that you can do, if you're getting too much detail from your velocity field, and it's creating too many kind of swirls in your particles, then what you could do is downsample the volume. If you've got a really high resolution pyrosim, it doesn't need to be super high res for the particles. You just want like a guiding velocity. Sometimes I'll do a low res sim just for this purpose. There we go. You can see we're getting a lot of swirl, like a lot of breakup there, even though I turned off that noise. So what you could do is take that velocity here and do a volume sample, resample on it. It's not a VDB, so you can use volume resample. And you could do resolution scale, or you can also do it by specify exact resolution by size, so you can specify a division size. So I think, what do we have? Our division size here was 0.5, so if we specify 2, that's like 4 times, lower. And you can see that in your guide as well. See how that's a very smooth field now? And look at the noise. We're not getting that noisy breakup anymore. So you can sort of do those post manipulations to it, which change the way that your particles will react. So there we go. That's, that's not too bad. Oops. All right. So we got that. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Obviously we'll have to render them and work all that stuff out, but that's a good start. Now, if we have a look at if we wanted to do like fine trails coming off this explosion as well, which aren't really in the ref, but just because you mentioned it, Hardik. If we have a look, all the way back here, let's use this as a source. Even actually, the sphere before expansion, we could use. Come on. There we go. This one. That could be our source. So I'm just going to do like $F less. Actually, I'll do points so I can get an emission happening. And I'm just going to create random velocity. Maybe some upward as well. Okay, turn the poppered vector off for a second. I need a lot more velocity. Even more. Oh, I've got a drag on here. Let's turn that off. Hey, there we go. Alright, so let's do a 10. There we go. And I'm just going to do this $F less than 5. So it shoots out a few little particles, maybe a few more. There we go. Alright, need a gravity. Because if you think about these sort of things, these would be like debris that are dragging a bit of stuff with it. I don't know what. A little bit of flaming something. Add a bit of drag so they slow down and then fall. There we go. And I like to use a pop replicate here. Plugged into the reference stream, the purple one, or the right one there. Merge it back in. And then just stream points behind. And you can see you get little trails. Now, what I've noticed when you set the inherent velocity to 0 is that for whatever reason that does not work and it does not freeze them. But when you set it to 0.000, as close to 0 as you can without saying 0, then it does actually leave them behind with 0 velocity. So that's some sort of bug in there, but you can see I get these nice trails. I can control, I can give them jitter, I can interpolate the source, I can control their life. So, maybe they don't live that long. Let's go back to positive. There you go. So maybe they don't live very long. I kind of want them to live a long time. I'm going to increase my substeps here. So I get nice trails. Oh, that's interesting. It's giving me some downward velocity, which I don't really want, but, you know, I'd probably need to create my own velocities if I want to have a better source. There we go. Nice, dense trails. And then turn on your pop advect. Now, you can see what's happening here. The pop advect is stopping my trails from actually shooting out there. So what I might do here, let's have a look. Might get my, let's see if I can get them happening a bit faster. Let's go like 500. Nice quick trails, but I might turn this on as well. $F greater than 10. So that my trails get kicked out and then it's allowed to evolve. I think what's happening here though as well is my streak is interfering with this stuff. So perhaps perhaps what I should do is not do the streak on this one. Is it advecting? Let's turn off the guide. It doesn't really seem to be advecting. Oh, you know what? I actually only want to advect the trails, not the leaders. So I'll put it over here. There we go. So I don't actually want to advect these guys. These are the ones that are carrying the trails behind them, but the trails that are left behind are the things that I want to advect. Potentially, you don't need to necessarily, but let's go back to having the streak and the volume resample, downsampling. There we go. Now it's working fine. So, yeah, trails. That's how you could do them. You could, you know, create scale over time for your volume rasterize, but again, volume rasterize that. Turn it into... there's a p-scale coming out of here probably. I'm just going to say at p-scale equals 0.1. Oh, there's no density, that's why. At density equals 1. Hey, there we go. Alright, so let's set that p-scale up. Now we can change it here. So yeah, you can see as those points separate, they do start to show up as, you know, points. So that's something you need to be mindful of. But yeah, this is a really, you know, nice way of getting super fine, high fidelity trails. I mean, that looks pretty rubbish, but you need to, you need to work on it. But yeah, this is the way to go when you want really fine stuff. And this is kind of the approach, you know, that I've taken in lots of different kind of examples. Let me show you one. Oh, we're out of time. Good time to finish on something cool. Let's see. I don't know if I have it as a movie. Oh yeah, maybe this one. There you go. So this shot. There you go. So see these trails. It's exactly the same process. Obviously I've added a little bit more noise and they have a little hot core to them as well. But this is a tutorial that I do in the course, in the CG Spectrum course, and you can see it. You know, it's kind of, I'm doing similar things in there. I'm doing some more complex stuff as well. But these trails, essentially, you know, that's kind of the approach. And then rasterize, create little hot cores on them, sparks, all that kind of stuff. And you do it right and work on lighting and shading, and you can come up with a pretty cool shot. So, yeah, there you go. That looks totally different, but it needs a lot of work. And obviously our explosion is a lot better now. So what I'm going to do is write that to disk over the week, and I will probably work on this again next week. one more week at it, and then I've got something else to work on. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry about the coughing. Hopefully I'll be all better by next week. And have a good week. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I really appreciate you, supporting and joining me every week. It's nice to have a chat, show you guys some cool stuff in Houdini. And, yeah. I'll see you guys later. No worries. Thanks, Audrey. Nice to see you again. Thanks, guys. I'll see you guys next time.